Welcome to Season 2 of Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I am really excited to continue this journey and mission into 2024 to help shorten the overwhelming learning curve for those who are newly diagnosed or yet to be diagnosed with breast cancer. It has been such an honor and a privilege to be able to connect and interview many survivors, thrivers, caregivers, oncologists, surgeons, nurses, therapists, advocates, and more in order to provide much needed holistic guidance for our breast cancer community. Breast cancer has become such an epidemic, so the more empowered we are, the better. By listening, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast, it truly does help bring in more listeners from all over the world. I appreciate your help in spreading this knowledge. My episodes are released weekly on Apple, Spotify, and other platforms, and YouTube. Now let's listen to this next episode of Test Those Breasts. Hey, well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts, and it is Season 2, and I'm so excited that I have a friend of mine that I've actually met in person. It's a crazy story, and we'll explain it, but her name is Kristin Gravatt, and Kristin was actually diagnosed at age 38 with stage 3B invasive ductal carcinoma with a rare T4B tumor. She thrived throughout 16 rounds of chemo and 30 rounds of radiation. And after her mastectomy and radiation, she was left with the choice of delayed reconstruction. She was able to research and find the best flap procedure for her personal needs at the Center for Restorative Breast Surgery in New Orleans. Hello, Kristin. It's so good to see you and hear you.
I wish I can give you a hug, but at least we got one birthday plug in.
Hey, we will see each other again. This is such a crazy story. You know, as you know, and as a lot of breast cancer survivors know, it is the sisterhood of all sisterhoods. And
Yeah.
I, as long as you, as well as you, have met so many women and men, women, though, in particular, like it's a sisterhood on support groups such as the New Orleans support group and other DIEP flap surgery support groups. And I just remember, your name and it popping up and all of us conversing with you, and
Yes.
which actually brought you to New Orleans. And interestingly enough, I had my phase 2 DIEP flap surgery on the exact same day that you were having your phase 1 surgery. Right. And we came in there, you were there with your parents and I was there with my husband, and you turned around. I'm like, oh my God, it's you. And so we've actually met. It's not every day that we meet our sisters in person. So I'm just so grateful that I got to meet you and another one of my sisters that I've known for a whole entire year. She was in the hospital having surgery as well. And so that was really fun. I am so pleased that you're here to tell your story because it's a really interesting one. And I know that it's going to add so much value to our show. So with that, I would love for you to kind of share first, who was Kristin before breast cancer, before all of this?
Yeah. So, Kristin my husband and I had recently just sold our sanitation company. We worked years to build it up and we sold it. It was really stressful. But after that, it felt like a long stage of Disney World. We were just so happy and elated. Everything was, in life at our time for our age, especially. We were just living like our Cinderella story tale. And then my husband landed a job with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's like his dream job. And then basically after that, everything just kind of started rolling with the cancer and my diagnosis. So I went from kind of living my best life to I'm 38 with a with a second grader and a freshman with stage 3B cancer, so it was like a roller coaster / gentle world. And I'm finally being able to be that Kristin Gravatt again. Slowly she's coming back out of the shell. But I was the mom, the sports mom doing it all. And I think that for me was a really hard pill to swallow when I did get sick, is that, you have to limit yourself and listen to your body. You know that.
You
Same with
do.
the flap procedure. Yeah. But yeah, and I wasn't working at the time, and I feel like that was almost like God's grace because I didn't have the stress of, trying to figure out how to get to appointments and chemo, as much as I had to go through. I didn't have that. And I really feel like that was a calling from God that I wasn't working at the time, and I'm able to work now, but at the time I wasn't.
Yeah, I can say probably the same thing. I had just retired from the
Mhm.
school district and had a huge retirement party, as my audience knows. I, was on top of the world. I feel like I was really busy, just like you were before breast cancer, and had this big old party. I was so excited. We had plans, man. We had lots of
Right.
plans. My husband had already retired the year before, or that was his first year of retirement before I went in, and all of a sudden breast cancer. And it's like,
Right.
okay, so same thing. I didn't have to go to work.
Right.
That's
We
a
were
big
blessed in that
deal. That
part.
is
It is.
not something that, I mean, so many people have to go to work. Hey, before we move on, what are you doing on Sunday?
Oh, I am going to be watching the Super Bowl from home while my husband's attending it live, but I am super excited for him and everybody. And I hope you're cheering for us as well on Sunday.
It's so funny because I've always been a 49ers fan, but I also am a Kansas City fan. We have a
Okay.
friend who lives there. And so we've seen this before, and it's really hard to root for the person or the team. And at this point, because I liked both teams, I don't care who
You're
wins. I'm
50-50.
just
That's
excited.
okay. As long as
Yeah.
you're 50, I can handle 50-50.
Yeah, we can do that. It'll be an exciting game. So, can you share with us then? You have a complex story. Can you share with us what your diagnosis was a little bit further, and
Yeah.
also what your treatments were like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was diagnosed, I originally thought that my tumor was from a heart monitor that I wore from an exercise class that I attended Monday through Friday. And it's a heart monitor sat on the left side, rubs about right there. But actually, what it was a tumor on the surface of my skin. And then other things, the skin started thickening and my nipple started to go in a little bit and was inverting. That's when immediately I went to my DO and he said, "You're so young; it's going to take a long couple weeks for a mammogram, a service. So I would like for you just to go to the local emergency room and tell them that you're having chest pain so that you get the ball rolling. Because I really feel like if I send you home, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight." So I did that, and they immediately gave me a chest x-ray right then and there, and they sent me over to an oncology group at the local hospital at that time. And it was like from the time I was admitted into the emergency room to the time I had found out I was going to have to go through lots of treatments was 2.5 hours. That's how fast pathology worked for me because I'm so young.
It's really interesting. There are more and more younger women getting diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm really trying to spotlight that because I think it's so important. I just read a story of these two gals who are best friends, and I really would like to have them on my podcast. They were 29 when they got diagnosed, and they got diagnosed like within a month of each other.
Yeah, my
And so,
breast friend is also 31, and she was diagnosed 1 month prior to me. Here, lives locally, and we've really, I would love for you to interview her too.
oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but
I do think
same
that's
thing.
important. I want to go back real quickly about something I caught that you said. Your doctor sent you to ER.
Hmm.
And I remember someone telling me in the year that I had my breast cancer, I had something else come up along called this really rare anemia, and we couldn't figure out what it was, and we needed to figure out something. Somebody told me that if you walk into the emergency room, like even at UC, like in San Francisco, or um, that they actually do have they put together a team for you, and it's
Yeah, no,
quicker to
that's
do it
true.
that
There's a
way.
tumor board that is put together for you while you're
Yeah.
there. I mean,
Well, I'm really glad that your doctor did that. I feel like that was a saving grace for you right there.
oh,
Ku
absolutely.
Kudos to that doctor. Okay, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so stage 3B, I was ER/PR positive, so estrogen and progesterone positive, HER2 negative. Um, when you're a HER2 negative protein in your body, sometimes chemo does not work for you. In my case, I did not have a full response to chemo. However, it significantly shrunk that tumor. But with that being said, when I went in for my mastectomy, they really had to take out a lot of skin. I was considered skin sparing, but there wasn't, you as my friend have seen pictures of my prior. But when I say they had to remove a lot of skin, they had to remove a lot of skin, and that's why basically I ended up at New Orleans because I was considered a complex reconstruction because there was no way they could stretch anything out for an implant or basically I had no other option but the deep flap procedure, and I'm extremely grateful that I was kind of just forced into that, now all said and done. But I don't think that's like a choice any woman should have to make. It's like I only have one option, but I'm very glad that my local breast surgeon told me this up front because so many women don't know that until they get through the core process of it all. And then they're like, oh my gosh, now I have to go this route. This whole time I thought I was going to get expanders and immediate reconstruction, where I mentally had time to prepare. And I really think that helped me on my, on basically my research, because there is microsurgeons where I'm at, at KU Medical Center and places near, but those wait lists are so long for you to get in for the deep flap procedure that it was like, um, I didn't do it for the wait time, but I did it for the sole purpose that these New Orleans doctors, that's all they perform all day, in and out every day, that's all they do is they pioneered that there. And that's why I felt more comfortable traveling to the center than doing, because so many people say, why didn't you stay local? You live in the Kansas City metro. You have so many options where you're at. I do have so many options where I'm at, but I also have options a little further down the road where these microsurgeons I consider platinum care. And seeing what she was able to do for me with radiation, 30 rounds of radiation on top of having the skin completely removed with the mastectomy because of the tumor that grew into the skin is amazing. I don't think any other place in the world would be able to do what they did for me.
And you had Dr. Zavar.
I had Dr. Safar, yes.
Okay, yeah, and
So
I've heard
after the
so many great things about her.
She is a beautiful person inside and out. And a piece of advice she gave to me that I'm very glad she did is she looked at me because I said, I feel great. You're heavily medicated. You're on top of the world. You have a reconstructed body. You just feel great right after surgery. At least I did. I woke up like, I'm refreshed. I'm a new woman. I can move on. I can start trying to live life as a survivor, not as a patient. And she said to me, there's going to come a time where you're going to think to yourself, why did I do this? Why did I do this to my body? Why did I choose this option out of all the reconstruction? Why am I in so much pain still? Why do I not feel right? And I told my mom and dad as I left, I said, why did Dr. Safar say that to me? Because I feel great. And my mom said, there's a reason Dr. Safar said that to you, and you just don't know it yet. Well, 10 days later, when I'm sitting at home in excruciating pain every time I sneeze, cough, drink, I thought to myself, that's why she said that. But she said also the wait is worth it. Just wait it out. Give yourself 3 months, wait it out. And I promise you are going to feel like, wow, I know why I did this. And then that still resonates with me to this day. I can hear her beautiful little Pakistan voice telling me, just wait it out and you'll know, why you choose to do that. And I love her and I give so much props to her. I don't know what I would do if I hadn't crossed paths with her.
We need to
She
get
was willing
her.
to take me on when some of the others weren't.
You have her phone number, right?
Yeah.
You should text her and tell her she should be on the podcast because
Yeah.
I'm really trying to highlight female surgeons, microsurgeons,
Mhm.
and because I had Dr. Cabling and I love Dr.
Yes, he
Cabling.
was my assistant.
I mean, so you like had the major dream team. I had Dr. Wright and Dr. Cabling for phase 1, and that was the dream team too. And it's so important to know your team and how they work with each other. That makes an enormous difference. And I like that Dr. Safar said that to you, because one of the reasons that I ended up going to New Orleans, I was just told I wasn't on any support groups or anything like that. Three little birdies told me, separate birdies told me that they had a friend that went, or my sister-in-law went to this place and had this deep flap and things like that. And so I'm the one that sort of jumped in and started doing the research. And one of the things that I heard over and over again was that the center is really good with holistic healing. It's
Hmm.
not you just go in, you do your surgery, and they kick you out. Usually a lot of these surgeries are outpatient, and that's not the center's philosophy. They keep you in for a couple of days. I was personally in there for 3 days, and they took care of us. And my husband calls it a boutique hospital. You get
Yeah.
really good food and snacks
Yeah,
and
the
care
salmon
and everything.
salad,
I
please.
know, so good. And so Dr. Safar, that is one of the things that she did right there, was this piece of holistic healing for you. And she told you up front, this is probably going to happen, and you need to understand that it's not forever. And she's right. 3-4 months down the road, I was feeling great after deep flap. And so I waited an entire year for my phase 2 for a
Yes.
couple of different reasons. But anyway, so I'm so glad that she said that to you.
I think I need a preference that the reason she told me that is going into the surgery, I have been already dealing with lymphedema. I had the full axillary node dissection. So I had every single lymph node on my left side completely removed. So with that makes the surgery so much more complicated because you're going to have so much fluid that doesn't know what to do. So they actually were able to do some vascularized like lymph transfer, which basically is like a regeneration of the lymphatic system. I don't really know exactly what they connect or how they do it, but while they're in there for the deep flap, they also can do some vascular work to get your lymphatic system not to work the same as it did before, but anything a little bit is, you know, when you're dealing with lymphedema, it's an illness and it hurts and it comes and goes and it's lifelong, and we just have to learn how to manage the pain, whether you're doing compression sleeves,
Mhm.
garments, gloves. I do physical therapy weekly. I always have since the mastectomy. But what I'm going at is the center was able to somehow connect some things where I am in less pain now than I was before surgery.
And it's
And to
and it's
me,
not, and all surgeons are not created equal. So there
no,
are things that you need to know about the surgeon. Is the surgeon, number one, a plastic and microsurgeon?
absolutely.
First and foremost, how many of these types of surgeries have they done? Is it something that they offer on their menu periodically, or is it something that they do all the time? And we know that Center for Restorative Breast Surgery only deals with these types of surgeries. And so I would highly recommend anyone to go there, 1,000 times over. I have uncovered a few other surgeons that are amazing that I've interviewed, and I think it's really important to be able to spotlight people all around the United States or wherever, so that people have these options, because there are other really great surgeons out there. The center is just filled with amazing surgeons that do this every single day. So
Correct.
thank you for sharing that about lymphedema, because it is no joke. And there are a lot of things that you cannot ever do again. Like,
Mhm.
and I actually am in prevention mode. So I have
Yeah.
been told I can't get a tattoo on my left arm, especially because I had only 3 removed from there, but I still can't do my big phoenix tattoo on there that I really wanted to do.
Sure.
So I put it on the back of my neck instead.
There you go.
You're not supposed to get into super hot water
Yeah.
and be in too much heat and things like that. So um, I want to talk about how we met and how those support groups on Facebook encouraged you and educated you, and
Sure.
how you sort of were led to my podcast.
Yeah, well, I love your podcast. Could sit and I scrolled right when you sent me your link. First of all, there's so much good information in that. But I think with me having to do the 30 rounds of radiation and knowing that I had to do the flap procedure, did help me a little bit. But really, the Facebook page is where I said, "Hey, I've had radiation. What are your other experiences?" With that, because it makes, like, your skin is different. It's just different. It's tougher, it's thinner in areas. It's hard to work with. And the feedback I got made me so much more reassured that, like, okay, they all did this. I can do this, all right? And then my next post I made where we really connected was, "Hey, I have an opportunity to travel over Christmas time, but I have to leave my 15-year-old and my 8-year-old on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. I have the number one support system in the world and the best husband, but that's really hard to do as a mom." And that's when you chimed in. And I think maybe we even got into a personal message when you were like, "If you have the opportunity to do it and you're ready, you'll figure it out." And I think you were the one that said, maybe it's good that you're away from your children. They're on their Christmas winter break. And that way you could heal with your mom and dad for the full 10 days and focus on you and not looking around doing laundry that you shouldn't be doing. Because part of the biggest part for me of the healing was not doing anything. That's really hard to do.
Right.
And you have to do that or you will not get better. And I think that's where we really connected, is because you were kind of like big sistering me, like, you can do this. And if it wasn't for that page, we would have never known that we were surgery friends. And that's an important reminder right now. A piece of advice I would give is to be selective on the pages you follow, because I was in like a deep flap group prior to this with 300,000 people in it, and those procedures were not done by microsurgeons, and it really, some of it I could tell just wasn't done by properly trained surgeons. And it scared me a lot that I shouldn't have fumbled on those pages, because those weren't our doctors. But I used some of those women's experience as, like, I hope this doesn't happen to me. And when I joined the New Orleans, very private, about 1,000 people, everybody has been to that center or known somebody or a direct companion of the person there. And that's really when I started getting the great advice, is
Yeah.
that group.
It's really interesting because I was talking to a couple of my friends today who I interviewed early on, Vanessa Vance and Kim Robinson, and we're super good friends. We've never met in person. We talk on the phone. We text every day. Kim and I are going to San Antonio in
Oh,
July to get our
yay.
nipple tattoos with Perky,
Yay.
and but it's like we're making a girls' trip out of it. We have a few
Yeah.
people, and I don't know. I think I talked to you about coming too.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe
know
I'll
if
be
you're
ready by then.
well, yeah, if you go for phase 2, you might want to wait, but nevertheless, you are invited to our girls trip. You can come anyway, and you can see the experience. But one of the things that we noticed was that the other Facebook groups aside from New Orleans are very different. And yes, you can tell that a lot of them have been given really uh, bad advice.
Hmm.
One being that, getting mammograms after DIEP flap. We know that this is not something that you do. And I didn't know that before, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. And just this morning, we were following a conversation on one of the groups, and there was a lot of misunderstandings on there. And Kim texted me and said, those girls on that group really need some help. And this is one of the reasons we tend to pop on there and give them links to certain episodes that I've done. And we also give them the option of going into the New Orleans group to learn more, because we feel that particular group is so much more well informed
Hmm.
than any other group. So if you ever are in a group like that, I'm sure that you probably are like, you ought to look at New Orleans, or at least, and also the Facebook group, just because the information is just much more informed and a lot more quality to it. So it's
And you and I both traveled to the center, out of state. And my drive is 11 and a half hours to get down there. And I can say the extensive amount of care that they've given to me since I arrived home, my weekly calls, my when I had that post-operative wound that was needing to heal, how they managed me while I was
Mhm.
in care of another physician. Just they never once made me feel like I was alone, and especially being so far. And there was no question that was too small to call. Oh, I mean, I was calling the PA, asking her all kinds of questions. Never once did she act like I was, an annoyance, or why are you calling me about that? You know,
Yeah.
how sometimes healthcare people can,
Mhm.
make you feel. And I think that's really important to know that if you are traveling, like I traveled from Kansas City to New Orleans, that's a long haul. Never once did I feel like they were that far when I needed them, and the way that they intervened with the healthcare system when I was here getting treated for my wound was absolutely amazing. I never once had to talk. They did all of it for me. You know what I mean? My doctors and Dr. Safar, and they have your back. They are there to make sure that you are 100% healing and where you need to be, even though you're not there underneath their strict eye. You could do there's all kinds of other options that you can connect with them, but they never once made me feel like because I left that I didn't get the same care as somebody that was able to go into their office every week. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I
I
think
felt the
that's
same. Yeah, I felt the same
pretty
way.
awesome.
Mhm. I had a wound, and Dr. Cabling's PA was really, really, really good with me, and it was just a wound. I mean, it's
Right,
something that happens with these kinds of surgeries. It wasn't infected or anything like that, and she put me on an antibiotic and I had to get a gel, and it cleared right up. And so
right.
they never made me feel like I was being a pain in the ass or anything like that.
Exactly. Where
Yeah.
mine was a little more like my wound actually did get a little staph infection,
Mhm.
which we all have staph infection on our bodies and our staph, and it wasn't like it was, but I had to get it cultured. But one thing I really, really also think is great of them is when I did call them and say, hey, I have a fever of 101.2. You know what they said to me? You need to go in. You need to go in and you need to get checked out because a low grade fever is pretty normal for about 30 days after post op. But when you have something like that, and we're not there to surveillance it, I want you to go in and get it checked out. And I'm very glad I did because I was able to get on, a pretty extensive antibiotic regimen that cleared it all up within 2 weeks. But what if they would have said, you're okay? You know, wait it out a little bit, something like that, or their transparency was awesome is what I'm getting at. They
Yeah,
wanted what was best for me, and
right. And they take things very seriously.
extremely, and
Yeah.
they're very timely too.
Yeah.
Everything, anytime any coordinator said they were going to call me or I was going to have any type of, telephone interview or virtual interview, they were never skipped a beat, like I just feel like the whole thing was pretty seamless for me from start to finish with the center.
Okay. So, I how are you doing today? How are you doing now?
I feel great. I mean, I feel complete and restored, and I feel like a woman again. And I have confidence. And I actually wore a pretty awesome bodycon dress recently, and I feel good. I think some people don't realize that deep flap is where they cut a flap out of certain areas of your body. Mine was on from hip to hip on my abdomen, and then they create a breast out of natural tissue. So you can, some people do hybrid things like that, but I think people just to have sensation in your breast, and be able to touch it and it be warm, to see veins going through it, to be able to see your heartbeat, it's such an amazing thing. And sometimes I can't believe that science is so real that that's how they created, my to complete my body. Do you ever feel
I
like that?
Yeah, because I never
Yeah.
even knew it existed. I
Yeah.
when I found out I had to have a mastectomy, all I knew was implants. That's all I
Right.
knew. And the deep flap or any kind of autologous surgery, they don't do that here in Reno. And some of the plastic surgeons might have it on their menu of certain autologous surgeries, but it's not something that they specialize in. So I had the wherewithal to understand that that is not the surgeon I want to go to. I wanted to go to
Yeah.
the best of the best. And I literally had to
Right.
talk my husband. I had to talk my husband into um, trusting me as a person who does a lot of research, and I wouldn't just go to any old back alley butcher to, because he was really concerned. He had never heard of it before. And I finally had to tell him, first of all, this is my body and I get to do what I want to do with my body. And you know me well enough that I would never go to someone that would, screw me up or anything like that. I've talked to a lot of people, and I think that that just sort of came out of fear for him.
My
Um,
father was the same way. My husband, like, he did all of his investigation and all that on his own. He was like, yeah, I mean, this is the platinum
yeah.
services for the surgery. My dad, who traveled with me and my mom Deva, married for 43 years, he was nervous the whole entire time, asking me those same questions. You know, how'd you get in connection with this place? Well, dad, it was a referral from other physicians. Things like that. And I think, like you're saying, I think that's just natural for anybody. And even people back here at home, first thing they ask me is, why'd you choose to travel for your operation? Well, because I wanted the best of the best. And they were in my network, and I couldn't be happier with my results. And as long as it and hard as the recovery is, I have never felt better about my body. And I cannot believe I could say that.
I love that.
I know. And I've
That
been through so much in a year, like I 12 rounds of chemo, a mastectomy, a revision of my mastectomy, 30 rounds of radiation. Then I had the delayed reconstruction. So then December 20th, it's just when I had my first phase one. That's a lot from January to December. And
yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like being able to move forward and be a survivor and not a patient at the moment is such a blessing for me and my entire family. And I don't think I would not be here right now with even close to be thinking about the start of the reconstruction process if it wasn't for the center.
Yeah. And
They really,
you've probably never showed your boobs so much to other women
oh
in your
my
whole entire
gosh,
life.
no, I'm so proud of those.
I
Those two
know.
my
It's like
survivor sisters. Yes.
just yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I know. It's like I told my husband, I'm like, yeah, I'm just, sending my breasts over to Kristin or, whatever. Because it's very fascinating.
It
It's
is.
fascinating to watch, from the very beginning, when you get finished with surgery and then 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 3 months. Look how great my breasts look. And some people might think that that's kind of weird, but it's fascinating what they can do. And when I
Yeah.
found out I had to have a mastectomy, I was freaking devastated. I really mourned the loss of my breasts before they even were gone. And I was only told that I needed to do one, but I ended up doing both, just because I wanted to,
Right.
try not to get it again, but you never know. Um, but um, it's fascinating that they can actually take those veins and reconnect. And there are surgeons who are really good at restoring sensation in the
Mhm.
rest of your breast, and nipples and things like that. And so for us to be able to talk about it out loud is really important, because I know there are conversations that I've had with other people about, generations before us. It just wasn't talked about. You don't talk about your vagina. You don't talk about your breasts. You don't talk about cancer. It was always just so hush hush. And I love the fact that our sisterhood, we're able to talk about it openly and make it real and make it and normalize it, because let's face it, so many people are being diagnosed with breast cancer, and we need to get it out there. We need to help shorten the learning curve for other people, right?
Right.
So that's kind of my next question for you is, what is one of the biggest pieces of advice you would give to somebody? Let's start with give to somebody who has yet to be even diagnosed?
Yet to be diagnosed, really, and I know this sounds so cliche, it's just right foot, left foot, because in the beginning you have so much thrown at you and you're on autopilot and you're not really absorbing, nothing's really resonating yet. I just think you just kind of have to find peace in the storm before you could really focus on fixing the problem. Don't go with the first piece of advice thrown at you. Don't, keep all of your options open when it comes to choosing an oncologist, a cancer center, choosing a breast surgeon. There are multiple options for you, and you just have to find out the best one for you, not the best one for Sally or Tim or so and so's grandma that got breast cancer. You're going to have all the advice thrown at you, the unsolicited advice, but what you have to do is find out what's best for you. And that's hard to say as you just find out you have cancer. All you think is, I'm losing my hair, I'm losing my breast. Those are those feelings that are natural for come first in a woman. But most importantly, our healthcare system is so big that you have so many options. And I think that's really important to find personalized care that is best for you and only you.
Right. One of the really cool pieces of advice my breast surgeon here in Reno gave me at the very beginning, because I had so many things thrown at me from, different opinions from different people, and it scared me. And this is before I even started chemo, and I was just in such a horrible place, like that place, right? And she told me that when you put it out there, because I put it out there, like I announced it to everyone, because that's how I process. It's how I
I
do
think
things. It's how
transparency
I
is
roll.
great.
Yeah, it's how I roll. Um, she told me when you put things out there like that, you're going to get a lot of unsolicited advice. And the biggest thing you need to learn how to do is to filter. Filter. There's some people who go underground into monk mode and they don't say anything and don't do anything. But there are people who do put it out there and you have to filter. And that was really, truly one of the best pieces of advice that she could have given me. And so the advice you just talked about were, people who had just been diagnosed. Um, and that's such great advice. There's so many options. I think intuition plays a huge role in that as
Mhm.
well. And that intuition will lead you to the right decision and the right team and the right, resources and so forth. Um, I started this podcast because I really want people to be educated before they're even diagnosed.
Mhm.
I wish I would have known so many things, and I know we can't know everything until it happens to us, right? But I feel like there's a way to at least give that education, information to people who've never even been diagnosed. I know that people have reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jamie, thank you for doing that episode on your podcast about,
Yeah.
mammograms and just because I'm younger, I can't get a mammogram." And I
Mhm.
actually called my doctor for the first time and said, "I want a mammogram," and I was able to get in and get one, or whatever, ultrasounds, scan,
Mhm.
whatever, any kind of test, right? Um, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is just sort of sitting on the sideline and they know people with breast cancer, but they've never even had it before? Is there any kind of advice that you would give to them to prepare them for maybe someday them actually being diagnosed?
Yeah. Um, earlier you struck a chord when you said intuition. I really think looking back, I was having some striking pains in my chest, which were developed before a lump, things like that. Just be very, very proactive with your body. Early detection saves lives. Some people get upset when they hear that because by the time they found out about it, some of them are metastatic and it's horrible, but when it comes down to that's the truth, if you're skipping on mammograms at 40 and older, as soon as you hit that age point, even earlier, if you're feeling anything is off, go in. And that's like the only advice I could have for somebody that, possibly is sitting on there teetering or doesn't know or wants to educate themselves, is just to be proactive with your body. Self
Right.
exams, if I would have not thought, hey, I think this is a rash from my breast heart monitor. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is some type of rare breast cancer on my skin. Maybe would I have been a stage 2 then and not a stage 3? Sometimes that runs through my mind. And I don't want anybody to live with any type of breast cancer guilt, because it happens really quick. That you know that from the time it happens, it's a very quick process.
Yeah, I coulda, shoulda. I
Coulda,
wish I
shoulda.
would have. Yeah, because I felt a lump all that spring before.
Mhm.
But I always felt lumps. I had lumpy butt breasts.
Same
I
here.
had dense
Fibros.
breast tissue. So, and I knew that I was going to go get my mammogram at some point soon. But every once in a while, I'd feel those burning sensations, little zingers and things like that.
Singers,
And I'd be
yes.
like, whoa, what's that? Um, and when I did make my appointment for the mammogram, they asked me, do you have a lump? Did you feel anything? I'm like, nah, no. And they said, okay, we'll see you in 3 weeks. And I hung up the phone and my husband's like, that's not true. Thank goodness he was sitting right there and heard me. And I hung up the phone. He goes, that's not true. You do feel a lump. I felt the lump. And I'm like, you're right. What the fuck was I thinking? That's really what I said to myself. And I can say that because this is explicit. So um anyway, I was like, yeah. So I picked the phone back up and I said, yeah, that's not true. I actually do feel a lump and it does feel different. And I have felt sensations. And they're like, oh, okay, well, that changes things. We're going to move it up 3 weeks. Can you come in this Tuesday? I'm like, yeah.
Right.
So good thing I did. Otherwise, I would have been waiting for another 3 weeks. And
Right.
so intuition, listen to your body. I love that, Kristin. It's so
Yeah.
important for people who've never even been diagnosed. We're knowing that 1 in 8 women get breast cancer sometime in their lifetime, and it's getting younger and younger. You, 38, you weren't, I mean,
Yeah.
that was probably the last thing that was on your mind.
Right. And like you said, with the dense breasts, like fibrocystic breasts is kind of like what I had in the past. I was also a gymnast. So I always had like dense breasts and kind of, nodular breasts, I guess you can say. So like the lump thing that you're talking about, but in your gut you felt it when you felt that lump, did you not? Like when
Yeah.
I felt my skin toughening right there, I felt it in my gut. And that's kind of going along with the intuition thing. If your heart's feeling funny, follow it,
Yeah.
go get be proactive and go get whatever you need to get checked out, and not just in your breast, all over your body.
All over your body. Yes. And I know that I'm probably the same as a ton of other people. I was really busy. I was super
Yeah.
excited about retiring from the school district. I was running around. I had another podcast. I was building a coaching business for educators. I had Be That Teacher podcast. It's still out there, 11 episodes. That was going to be my retirement. I was busy, busy, busy. And I was so excited that I'm like, oh, I would just sort of ignore it. But I
Yep.
knew something was going on. So thank you for that advice. I'm really, really grateful that you are one of my sisters. It sucks how it happened, but at the same time, I feel like my life is so much more enriched having people like you in my life, and that we can have these very, very frank conversations about breast cancer and normalizing what happens and helping other people. So, is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I would have loved to meet you organically somewhere on our own terms, but I meeting you at the center with no makeup on at 6 a.m. or whatever was even better. And I always kind of think of God winks, and I know that us being there at the same time and being operated on it, and our families sitting in that, holding the area together is just, it was kind of meant to be. And then, like I said, silver lining of cancer is you get people out of it, and you also get better mindset. And I think you're one of those people for me. So
I
thank
think so
you.
too. And thank you. And that our hearts are more empathetic, I would imagine.
Mhm.
I've always been an empathetic person, but it really has made my heart very happy to have people like you in my life as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And go Kansas City
Thank
on Sunday.
you.
Right now, we are recording 2 days before the Super Bowl, and I will be thinking about you. I'll even text you
Yeah.
and let you know that I'm thinking about you. And I just, I can't even tell you which team I want to win because they're both really awesome teams. So,
They both have great tight ends, I'll say that much.
yeah. Gotta love those tight ends.
Yeah, you got to.
Um, all right, Kristin. Well, thank you very much
Alright.
for
Have a
joining
lovely
us.
afternoon.
And I will be talking to you soon. And to my audience, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Test Those Breasts. And we will see you next time on the next episode. Bye for now. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.